Corona TV viewers. This is Peter Keys from Leonard Skinner. I want to wish you all a happy birthday.
First of all, let's just do the elbow bump because we can't do the handshake right now.
Hello, everybody on Corona TV. This is Macy Gray.
You're smiling, and I saw your beautiful daughter earlier, who I said could come on the show anytime. Welcome, Shiv Singh.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Great to be with you.
Well, welcome everybody. Hello. Hope you are well. It is Wednesday, September 9th. It is 9/9/20. I don't know what significance that has in our lives, except for the fact that it is Wonderful Weirdos Day. Do whatever, be weird. It's okay. This is great. I'm finally home. I'm safe. I'm surrounded by weirdos. And you're looking at the CWO, the Chief Weird Officer. That is me. They say keep Austin weird. That's only so that I can feel comfortable in Austin. But yeah, it's a day when you should just do whatever the hell you want. If people don't accept you, too bad. It's their loss. At the end of the day, this is all about being free. Even when we are sheltering in place or locked up or locked in or locked down, I think acceptance is a new superpower. And the more that we accept others, the more we'll accept ourselves, and the more we accept ourselves, or the more likely we are to accept others, if that makes sense. This man is not a weirdo. He's my guest today. It's Mr. Geoff Ramsey. I decided to anoint him, to knight him. I decided he should be Sir Geoff Ramsey, because he is royalty in the digital marketing world. And, he's an old timer, but you wouldn't know it looking at his running times or his cycling times. And he's going to be my guest, and I'm super excited that we are catching up. Joey Dumont is here, and he said, coming to you today from Mars. And if you, I'll show a photo tomorrow to illustrate what Joey means. He's in San Francisco, and you actually cannot believe, unfortunately, sadly, what the Bay Area looks like right now with these wildfires that are absolutely out of control. It's just unbelievable when you see a containment factor between 0 and 10, and it is 0. It is just not contained, not even close to being contained. And it's really, really sad that one of these wildfires came from a gender reveal party of all things. It almost seems just tragic. It is tragic. Leslie Laredo is here, and she said, Geoff can deliver more slides in an hour than anyone else. We're not going to ask him to try today, but we have seen, in fact, that it is possible. Leslie says, I think everyone's weird. We should all celebrate. Well, she didn't say it. Actually, Johnny Depp said it. I think everyone's weird. We should all celebrate our individuality and not be embarrassed or ashamed of it. Well said, Johnny or Leslie, whichever. Bob is here, coming to you from beautiful Vermont. Jeff Minsky is here, coming to you from downtown Livingston, New Jersey. So neighbors with Mr. Ramsey as well. So welcome everybody, and we'll get to your comments shortly. Here's someone who isn't weird as well. It's Mr. Tom Dearline. And let me tell you something. For those of you that don't know Tom, well, I have to tell you, like, I'm not going to tell you too much about him, except to say that he needs to come on Corona TV and tell you his story himself. But this was his post today on Facebook. FCKU Sniper, 14th anniversary of my Alive Day, September 9th, 2006. The best revenge is a life well lived. Tom was shot by a sniper serving our country, serving overseas. And he not only has come back, but he's come back stronger than ever before. He has done so much good for so many people, and he truly celebrates life and has said that this was one of the best things that could have happened to him. So we just wanted to say happy Alive Day to you, Mr. Tom Dearline. You are simply the best. Jeff says, a true American hero. Yes, we thank him for his service, but we thank him for his hope, his positivity, and his optimism as well. And Quinny's here. Quinny, welcome. I haven't seen you on the show yet. He said, Geoff is the best. He is. And so are you, Quinny. And I hope you are doing well during these tough times as well. So many birthdays today. Within my iMedia community, Mr. Rick Parkhill himself, the man that started the whole iMedia revolution. Andy Jedniak as well. Happy birthday to you. Michelle Kaplan, my cousin here in Connecticut. Happy birthday. And then, of course, to everyone on LinkedIn, just want to say happy birthday to Glenn, to Noel, to Michael, to Pooja, and so on and so forth. But I want to get to Mr. Ramsey. But before I do, the seated soliloquy, of course, has to be in his honor. And it's all about statistics. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. You know, for those of you that know me, you know that I started my marketing career in South Africa at Nando's Chickenland. I was in charge of all statistics for the brand stores. I monitored customer count, ticket average, menu mix, and our unprecedented and defining iconic Coke promotion. I would slice, dice the stats by time of day of week, and the all-important QSR benchmark of same store sales, which is basically comparing them against the exact same time from the previous year. Now, as an aside, we're actually seeing something very similar in the US with respect to deaths. As it turns out, there are roughly 200,000 more deaths in the US compared to the same time last year. And this has been used to debunk some of the allegations that COVID-related deaths are not, in fact, due to COVID, when in fact they probably are. But back to the subject at hand, back to my Nando's days. At one point, I actually printed fake business cards, and they had a quote on them that said, "Statistics, they never lie unless I want them to." For example, a 100% increase or doubling sounds very impressive, but if the base is super low, for example, a jump from 1 to 2, then it clearly is nothing to crow about. Perhaps I was channeling Benjamin Disraeli, who once said there are 3 types of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. eMarketer's approach back in the day was to aggregate all the disparate research and data points in the marketplace and to present essentially a poll of polls, so to speak, a Switzerland approach that also helped differentiate it in the market. And of course, eMarketer was the company that Geoff Ramsey founded. We are surrounded by data, and perhaps better descriptive words might be overwhelmed, smothered, or suffocated. Oftentimes, the source of the research is self-serving. Surprise, surprise, the Radio Association of Broadcasters reveals that more people are listening to the radio than ever before. We can choose to be cynical about it, or we can actually choose to be discerning. And in doing so, approach statistics with equal amounts of wonder, curiosity, and awe, and, there's that ampersand again, a healthy dose of realism, skepticism, and pragmatism. I'll leave you with a reminder from neuropsychologist Warren McCullough, who said, "Don't bite my finger, look at where I'm pointing." And that always reminded me of something. In fact, that was probably the original quote, but it was Rex Briggs who turned around and said, "Don't look at the finger, look at where it's pointing." Well, he's not going to pull my finger right now. I hope he doesn't bite my finger. I hope he doesn't do anything with my finger, but I am pleased to welcome Mr. Geoff Ramsey. Welcome to the show, Geoff.
Hey, Joe, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you as well. And I have to say, by the way, Adrian Skinner is here. She was saying hello to Leslie. Leslie was saying hello to Adrian. I'm sure people are going to start saying hello to you as well. Michael Donnelly was just at Nando's this weekend and he sent me a photo. But enough about them. Let's talk about you. First of all, I love what you've done with the place. The decorating is amazing.
Yes, of course. I cleaned up for the purpose of this show. Normally, it's a pigsty. This is the wonderful thing about green screens.
Wait, no, don't. Why reveal? This is theater of the mind,
I forgot.
or it's theater. It's theater of something.
Yeah.
So now Leslie's saying hi to you. And I'm sure there are going to be more as well. And then, of course, I guess there's just a conversation going on. Who needs us, right? Now, Joey, Joey's talking to you and Geoff is talking to Leslie. And wait, you're Geoff. You know what I mean.
Joey and I have one day we have got to do a presentation together. You know, he's a very funny guy. I've got Mr. Numbers. He's got the concepts together on stage. I think we would be whacked out. I think most people would have to be on some kind of drug to watch us.
Well, I have to tell you that, you know, I'm still getting over the pain, the humiliation, the embarrassment, the feeling of being ostracized by the fact that, you know, we have our iMedia reunion in New Orleans in February before the world went to hell. I've written 5 books. I'm a published author. I'm a big deal. Finally, I'm going to get my keynote opportunity in front of my peers, in front of, you know, my brothers and sisters, the OGs, the old timers. But no, I'm still going to have to keep on waiting because the keynote went to you, Mr. Ramsey, and deservedly so.
It's amazing if you pay Rick Parkle enough, you can do whatever you want.
So that's what I had to do. Now he tells me. We
were talking about numbers before. You know how it's a 50% increase, a 200% increase. This was a 400% increase over what you were offering, as I understand it.
Off a low base, right?
Yeah.
You know, I almost put this into the soliloquy, but it was actually Bob Garfield at an iMedia that actually said, and I remember he said 50%. Let me tell you something. He said 50, and you know he could always deliver a line perfectly. He said 50% of the U.S. population is dumber than the other half. It is a proven statistical fact. And then he looked at someone who was like kind of trying to understand that, and he goes, "You, sir, I can tell exactly which half is you're in."
That is my job. Yes.
And by the way, not only is that true, but it actually humbles us and reminds us to never overestimate our consumer. Which is not to insult them, right? To call them dumb, but to recognize, you know, that 50% of the people are maybe not as, you know, sophisticated or snooty or whatever label you want to, you know, insert.
And don't get me started about the whole thing about intelligence in terms of tests and so on, because I think there's multiple kinds of intelligence. I would not say that I had a particularly strong business acumen, one form of intelligence, but I'm very creative. At least I like to think so. And I think that's probably the biggest characteristic that's driven me forward is the creativity as opposed to the business aspects of things. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but if I can communicate the ideas or the numbers in a way that resonates with people, maybe makes them laugh, well, then I've done my job.
Well, I think one thing is for sure, though, that the only profession where you don't want to get too creative with numbers is maybe accounting. But but I think statistics does work.
Yeah.
Carol Walker is here, and she said that is one really great room. So she might have the same one on Microsoft Teams. And Geoff said you should have used a Cannes yacht backdrop. I should have too, because I've never been to Cannes. So
no way.
No, I mean I'm not allowed to. I'm actually on the top 10 wanted list since I published Life After the 30-Second Spot. So they won't let me in, unfortunately.
You're lucky you're not in prison, young man.
Well, you know that's why I'm sitting in stats hell over around me. But
outdated stats. That's from 2018. What are you thinking?
You know what? It still gives me joy because we're talking about how many fewer people are watching television. So you know, I'm living in the past.
Well, guess what? The numbers just keep going down in terms of watching.
So send me a 2020 might actually be reversing that if you think about it, because what are people doing?
Temporarily an increase in consumption of TV driven by news, but on the other hand, we had live sports, which was virtually non-existent. And then when we get to the summer months, which we're kind of sort of still in, you find that the TV numbers drop again. And our belief is that at least in terms of TV spending, which has been $70 billion for the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, We believe that TV will never reach the $70 billion mark again. It won't fall off a cliff. It's not going to be like newspapers, but TV spending will just never reach the 70 billion mark. 2020, go beyond 2024. Throughout our forecast period, it's never going to be what it was. That I'm talking about linear TV, of course, not streaming, which is a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and we're going to get into streaming in a moment. But you spoke about your creativity, and I love how you essentially balance the two sides of the brain. You're often talking about very dry or very fact-based data points, hopefully only fact-based data points, which is left brain. But the way that you deliver and present is incredibly right brain. And it is your secret sauce. And I'll tell you, the first time that I met you, I didn't meet you. You were a rock, and I'm not just blowing smoke up, you know where. It was, and by the way, I spent about an hour today trying to find anything that would bring me to Thunder Lizard Web Marketing Conference 1999 in Monterey. And this is a little bittersweet because the only thing I could find was a photo.
Sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, Eric Ward has since passed away. But I thought this would be a great way to show him and pay tribute to him as the authority on links, because it was all about, at that point, e-commerce and turning browsers into buyers. But I couldn't find that Thunder Lizard logo anywhere. But I remember there was Eric, I remember Rick Bruner, and then there was this guy, Geoff Ramsey. And he wasn't like, you were a rock star. There were men and women throwing underwear on stage. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
That part.
I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if I will ever get to meet him one day.
Why is the color of my skin the same color as the red bars on the chart? That's what I want to know.
because like it, green screen and lighting and makeup, you fake it until you make it. I've just given up, by the way, I've just given up completely on trying to get the lighting right. So, I don't know.
Well, if I can shed any light on what that process is, right brain, left brain, you know how marketers love to put people in little buckets? Like you're a up and coming traditionalist, millennial, survivalist, they like to throw buckets in. I think that people are far more complex than that. And so what I like to say to people is they're thinking, oh, I'm not smart enough. And they're thinking in the kind of the traditional IQ way. They may have an emotional intelligence, for example, that is extraordinary, which can get them very, very far. I wouldn't say I'm the best right brain person or the best left brain person. I just combine them in a particular way that's unique for me. And it means, it kind of goes back to inventing the light bulb, which is, it failed 1,000 times before you get it right. It's more perspiration than inspiration. So when you look at one of my decks, it looks effortless, but that is only because I spend an inordinate amount of time, as anybody who has seen me work till 3 a.m. will tell you, getting that presentation just right. So a lot of it is just hard work and rolling up your sleeves. And then when you get on stage and it looks all breezy and nice, just remember that there was a lot of hard work that went into it.
And truly, no one is.
I look, in other words.
Well, no one has ever criticized any of your slides because they don't stay on the screen for more than like 0.1 second. So it just
pictures, right?
All they get is a blur. It's like trying to capture the superhero Flash moving across the screen. In fact, those red bars behind me could actually be your slides in transition. We don't know. We don't know.
Yes.
I do want to say Randy Selleck is here, and he said L'chaim. Randy's father just actually passed away this week, so we just want to wish him long life and condolences. If we can give you some solace and even a smile on the show, then we will have done our jobs, because this is the part where we learn a fun fact about Mr. Geoff Ramsey. And I don't know if I knew this. Should I have known this? this fun fact about you, which turns out that you're a magician.
Yeah.
Can you believe I found this photo of you, by the way?
Yeah, I can believe it, because retouching is quite an art of yours.
I mean, apparently green screen, lighting, etc. Is there anything real about Corona TV?
But you know what, Joe? You brought up something really good before we get into this, because it is true that I was a professional magician, but I want to give the audience a quiz or a puzzle, if you will, which is that I've had 3 professions in my life. One was being a professional magician. Number 2, I was in advertising for 17 years. I have the marks on my back to prove it. And 3, I started a company that's largely based on statistics. So the question is, what is the common denominator between those 3 things? 3 things: professional magician, advertising executive, and pioneer of a firm that deals with statistics. It's one word. You're not going to get it because you're just too polite. The answer to the question is manipulation.
Now,
but think about it: magician, manipulation; advertising, manipulation; statistics, we all know, can be manipulated. One of my favorite jokes is, I've learned over the years that if you take statistics and you torture them in the back room long enough, they'll confess to anything you want.
So you're self-deprecating as well in terms of the profession that has afforded you the ability to have such a magnificent room that you have in the background there.
Yes. Well, I simply going from my magic days, I've substituted PowerPoint, or in this case, Keynote, for the magic tricks.
Well, if you'd actually waited a little bit, you would have got some guesses. Jeff's guess prostitution. he should win a grand piano for that. That's a great line. Tom Morris said illusion. Tom said illusion. Then he saw Jeff's and he said close enough. And Brian said, Quinny said. Quinny said was going to say martinis.
They play heavily into my life, yes.
I was trying to think of one word that would be the equivalent of making budgets disappear, but I wasn't sure what that was. All right, so it wouldn't, I would be remiss if I didn't actually put you on the spot and ask you if you would be able to perform a magic trick for us. So, sorry, an illusion. A prostitution. Could you do a prostitution for us?
Well, you just put me on the spot and I had nothing prepared, but I am a magician, so I guess I should do something. So I'll just take this handkerchief here. There are no camera tricks in this, right? This is just...
I mean, other than the green screen, nothing.
Other than the green screen. So if I just put this into my hands, I'm going to try to keep this straight and narrow. I have no sleeves to make this as easy as possible, right? So if you're looking closely into the hands, right, what we find is it has completely disappeared. But you might be wondering where it is, and that's where this glass comes in. I wish it had some bourbon in it, but no, it has the handkerchief. And in fact, it's even gotten bigger. This is what happens with budgets. They disappear, but they come back bigger. You see how I segued that?
That was amazing. And the only thing that I'm thinking now, the only thing that could have been better would have been, but this is why they don't pay me the big bucks, is if I had that red handkerchief with me right now and I would have pulled it out of my pocket. Should we re-record this? We'll do it later. Yeah. That would have been kind of cool. Anyway, thank you for that.
It might come out green, but that's fine.
I have to tell you, I love the profession. I'm listening actually to David Blaine interviewed on Joe Rogan's podcast. I love watching Fool Penn and Teller. I love the whole idea of there's just something about the idea of magicians and illusionists endearing themselves and being able to fool them and getting on the show. I love the whole concept. It just makes me feel very warm, even though many of them go there knowing full well that they're not going to fool them, but they just want the opportunity to get in front of them. I just found that to be like quite nice.
One of the things that I most enjoyed about being a magician is that the people who are the smartest in the room, that most want to know how that trick is done, like that's what they're really focused on, they're going to have the toughest time figuring out the trick. Because where I am taking you from a mind standpoint, your mind goes exactly where I want it to go, and then you end up missing how the trick is done. So just a little hint there. Stand back, dumb yourself down, and maybe you'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm sure there is a no, I'm sure there's an analogy as well, or the ability to project yourself with respect to thinking about life, right, and perspective, in terms of again, what I said in the soliloquy, right? Don't bite the finger, or don't look at the finger, look at where it's pointing. And too often, an illusionist, I guess, or a magician might call it misdirection. Yeah. But maybe from a life learning standpoint, it's the fact that we're focused or too focused on the wrong things or the wrong places.
That's very often the case. Data, when we're swimming in it, you mentioned being overwhelmed by data. It's often because we're looking in the wrong places, and it's trying to figure out where the correlations are to what really matters to us, whether we're looking at it from a marketing campaign or we're trying to figure out our own lives, because we can fill our lives with all kinds of detritus, all kinds of stuff. But unless we're really focused on what's most important to us, whether it's as a business or as a person, we really miss out on a lot.
Well, I have one. If you've watched the show, you know that at some point I find a quote, and then I attempt to ridicule, humiliate, and embarrass my guests because I'm such a nice guy, and have them try and guess who said this. You may be the first person to correctly guess it. Actually, maybe a few people have guessed it. But who said this? A recent survey of North American males found 42% were overweight, 34% were critically obese, and 8% ate the survey.
Well, you've stumped me there, but that's a good one.
That was Banksy. So I just, thought that was kind of interesting as well. I think, again, right, it gets down to how closely we're looking at the data as opposed to understanding what the data is telling us, or maybe even the context around it.
Or the fact that 78.9% of all statistics are false.
I mean, that is a statistical fact, isn't it?
And by the way, that's a pet peeve of mine. If you're going to present on stage and deliver numbers in charts or mention a number, please, for goodness sakes, mention the source, because otherwise you could just be saying any number that you want that suits your purpose. And if nobody has a way of fact checking it to find out who said that and corroborate that number with the existing body of data or other evidence, then it's really worthless, at least in my opinion. Sorry to say that.
No, but to me that was such a layup, such a softball for me to say. Could you say that the sources are anonymous sources, confidential sources? No,
I'm saying that all sources should.
No, that's just a little dig at current events right now with respect to.
Well, yes. Sorry, I had my nose too close to it. Yes.
Yeah, you see, you just step back.
Yeah.
Get the. All right. So and by the way, your coloring, as you went a little bit closer, got really beautifully tan.
Is that
Just
right?
Try that. Yeah.
I like to be tan. There we go.
Yeah, don't move. Don't move. So Geoff, let's talk about, besides being a raconteur, a comedian, a magician, apparently a prostitute by definition, you are an incredibly intelligent, insightful man. You are an accomplished entrepreneur. All the stuff I said about Thunder Lizard and seeing you on stage and almost, cue to current times and present day. You raised a bar, you set a bar, you raised the bar, and you've never, ever underdelivered. But amidst everything, you founded a company and you recently sold the company. And it is no small feat. So I would love for you to spend a bit of time. This is, your origin story, to talk a little bit about starting this company, what you were thinking at the time, why you started it, what the vision was, and maybe just highlight a high, and a low of the journey leading up to what I think is a pretty amazing outcome, which is a sale.
Absolutely. So if we roll back the time machine to circa 1998-9. This was at the really the beginning of the internet, e-commerce as we know it. Back then, broadband was something that only a few people had. Remember dial-up? That was really what was driving things back then. Most folks listening to this program probably don't even remember dial-up, but this is the early Neanderthal days of the internet. And I was in advertising then. Remember, this was my second career. I had moved from the big shops and all the politics that go with that to a smaller niche kind of boutique shop, if you will. And we were making websites for clients because back then in 1998, that's what you did. Clients demanded that you build them websites. They didn't know why. They just knew that their competitors had them and they needed one too. It's kind of like mobile apps today where everybody has to have one, even though they haven't figured out exactly why this is helping the brand or will anybody pay attention if they build it. You can build an app, but if no one hears it, does it exist? So we were building these websites, and the main partner of the firm, the small ad agency, I was just a lowly hiree. I was an employee at the time and a senior account executive. But the owner of the firm, the agency said, we're building all these websites for our clients. We should build a portal or a web portal for business people to understand this whole internet thing. And I looked at him straight. And remember, in my PR releases and so on, it describes me, Geoff Ramsey, as a visionary. And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, well, I'm not sure this internet thing is going anywhere. Let that sink in for a second. That's how brilliant I am. But I said, I'll tell you what, I don't know that this internet thing is going anywhere. But if we put up a bunch of stuff and I do a lot of research and look at all of the data and try to make sense of it and then kind of put it up there and people actually pay attention and I start to see that there's some traction, well, then maybe we have something. So if you are in the advertising world or you're familiar with the agency world, you know that you work long, long hours for your clients. And so this was on top of those long hours. This got into the weekends, late at night. I remember I was in my apartment at the time. I was recently married. I had a 2-year-old who is now 25. So that tells you how many years I've been doing this. Do the math and you get to 23. So we started to put this website together. I actually had to teach myself some HTML. I'm a terrible coder, by the way. That is not my strong suit, but that's how we had to get the stuff out there. And I started looking at all of the different sources for just basic facts, like how many people are online? What are they doing? How much time are they spending online? What are the e-commerce dollars looking like? And I found that there was all these discrepancies between the different research sources. And so I made it my business to kind of put them all together, line them up, and try to sort through this chaos of numbers. And what I found was that the discrepancies could be boiled down to 3 different things. One, different definitions. In fact, different definitions probably account for the biggest difference between one set of numbers from one research source and another. Because if your definition of, as an example of a social media user is somebody who has ever been on a social media site, that's your definition. And somebody else's is that you have to be on it every day and you have to be a certain age group and you have to have your own profile page, etc. Then we're going to come up with very different numbers. The second thing is, what is the methodology that's being employed? I look very carefully at the N equals, what was the sample size? And if the sample size was 20 people in an online survey, I'm going to have much less trust in that data than if it was a 50,000 person random digit dial survey with much more rigorous or robust methodology. And then the third thing, which you also brought up, which is that sometimes there's a vested interest. So you have to look at the bias. So cutting a long story short, we started looking at all of this data and then this information. I started writing about it in blog-like form in 1998. We saw that a lot of traffic went there. And then my partner, he became my partner, but he was my boss at the time, told me that we should write a research report because Jupiter, remember them? Forrester Research, IDC, Gartner Group, these were all the big heavy hitters in the day. And man, you had to have a research report that was about this thick to really get people's attentions back then. That doesn't work anymore, by the way. So I wrote the first research report after hours in my apartment. Basically, I took a whole room and I littered it with paper all over the place. And I put this essentially writing a book together. We threw it up online. We had no idea how much to charge. We charged $2.95 for it. And lo and behold, people snatched it up like crazy. This was before the dot-com bust, right? And then we had to keep raising the price because there seemed to be a limitless amount of demand and the supply was also limitless. So raise the price. And basically what happened is we got the business rolling based on those first reports. But then you asked what were the low points, and I can remember one low point in particular, and that was at towards the mid 2000s. I think it was around April 2000. The stock market started to get a whiff of, wait a second, I'm not sure that this internet thing is all it's cracked up to be, at least in terms of today's valuations of at least these particular companies. Remember Webvan, the sock puppet, etc. So essentially, our business started to go to hell in a handbasket. Nobody wanted to hear from anybody that was selling market research statistics and particularly dealing with the internet. And so business just crumbled. I'll never forget walking into the CMO of Colgate-Palmolive. He's still a good friend of mine. And I said, you know, you used to have a subscription with us and now you don't. What's going on? He says, well, you know what, Jeff? When it comes to the internet, we at Colgate-Palmolive missed the boat. So I took that line. I said, what do you mean you missed the boat? And he says, yeah, we missed the Titanic. In other words, in his mind, by being a first in cutting edge brand marketer, jumping on the internet before anybody knew what to do with it, they dodged a bullet. So the point being is that timing is everything. But that was a low point because nobody was interested in the internet after the dot-com bust. And then after September 11th, nobody even wanted to pick up the phone to hear anybody talk about anything. It was really, really a rough time. I had to go through 3 stages of layoffs. This was not laying off a few people that weren't good performers. This was laying off the best of some of the best people that we had in the firm. And we went from like 55 people down to about 20, a very small crew. And so that was a very defining day. I am very proud to say that after that horrible day, right after September 11th, when we had to fire, 3 rounds of people, we never, ever had to go through another layoff again in eMarketer's history, even with the Great Recession 10 years ago, which was an absolute crusher for the stock market. We never laid off a single person due to having to cut back.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said, but first of all, while you were talking, I just went to get my little, keepsake, which is
that's that gum.
I paid good money for it on. I paid good money for it on eBay. Let me tell you.
I'll bet.
And eBay did well actually when, by selling sock puppets. But there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with the last thing you said, which is as a company, you didn't have to lay off again. Obviously companies are going through just tumultuous times right now because of COVID, where layoffs and furloughs are almost inevitable. How do you create COVID aside, culturally, organizationally, how do you create a layoff-proof company, because there are companies that can navigate these piranha-infested waters and never have to lay off. And then there are those that, you know, what do they say? Let's go back to a ship analogy. The first to flee are the rats.
Well, there's a lot of elements to that. And I think one of the words that you used, culturally, is probably the most important to focus on. Culturally, if you value people, you will use every means possible, use your creativity, your imagination, to save as many people as you can if you have to cut back a bit. What else can you cut? Can you reduce the salaries of some of the top leaders in the company? I will tell you that in the worst of the dot-com bust, my partner and I had to shelve our paychecks for months on end. Even though I was traveling around the world speaking, I couldn't use my Amex card, my corporate card. It was worth nothing. So I basically had to borrow from my own bank account. And my partner jokes that after about 3 years of doing this, finally we were able to we started to eke out a profit again. And I was able to submit my expense reports for 3 years and pay myself back. But that is the kind of sacrifice you need to make in order to create as safe an environment as you can for people. You want people to feel safe and secure as much as possible. You want everybody, if you have to kind of share the pain a little bit, because letting somebody go when they're a really good, strong, competent player, it just never feels good. It's not good for them, and it's not good for the company. And it sends a message to other people that they are expendable. And you certainly don't want to be doing that.
Going all the way back to the beginning of your story, it almost seems accidental in a almost serendipity, right? Which is you saying, I'm not really sure about this internet thing. But this insight now, when you look back, the Switzerland approach, the pole of poles approach, this ability to recognize and have this vision that, I mean, I don't even know if you could have anticipated the discrepancies and the noise as opposed to the signal. I mean, it was a stroke of brilliance. I don't know that, I think it would probably be true to say at the time you didn't realize how brilliant it was. But my
family can tell me, they tell me all the time how unbrilliant I am. But you know, you touched on something, and I do want to get to that. No, I did not have the prescience, the foresight to understand how complicated this thing would get and how important it would become to have a service that culls all of this information and attempts to make sense of it. And essentially, that really gets down to our mission at eMarketer, which has always been culturally about integrity. But the mission is to sort through that chaos of information, which just grows leaps and bounds. Because back then, at the beginning, there wasn't even search. Google didn't even exist. You know, we were looking at links and so on, and the search engines were not there. Social media did not exist. Friendster wasn't even on the horizon, certainly not Facebook. So things only got more complicated with more sources and more dissension about points of view about what was going to happen. So a lot of this is luck, to be honest. When I started doing the research and then reporting on it, there wasn't as much information out there, but it was still damn confusing. And so when we put these reports together, essentially it came down to saving people time, because everybody is besieged every day, and every day it gets worse with more and more information, more and more data. We're throwing off more data today than we did 10 years ago by a factor of, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, 6 billion factor. The point is, with all of this information, we need somebody that we can trust. And this has been the essence of our brand for 20 plus years, that does not have a stake in the game. Frankly, in 2002 or 3, when everybody was talking about this is the year of the mobile or going to be the year of the mobile, we put a wet blanket on it with a report that said, not ready for mobile prime time yet. And we were excoriated by companies like the Mobile Advertising Association and various other associations that had a vested interest in mobile. And not to say that mobile wasn't, as it absolutely is. I'm not a complete Leodite. I do have my mobile phone, but it was going to be a while before or after 2003, before we were going to see real change in mobile advertising and marketing. And of course, the big milestone there was 2007, when Steve Jobs held up the first iPhone and said, "This is going to be the future."
Wait,
so a lot of luck played into it. Now you have to add one other point, that because I got to make sure that you get this, is that if it were just me running the show, we would not be in existence today, or we would be a very small fraction of what we were. It took two other partners. The partner that said, "Let's start a website, Jeff, go write a report." It took that partner. He's long since retired. It took another partner. His name is Terry Shabro. He's been behind the scenes. He's a process guy. He's an operations person. He knows how to build a business. What do I know about that? I'm a creative person who puts numbers together, makes them flashy on the screen, gets you interested, and other people do all of the, the hard work, or the heavy lifting, as I like to call it. So it takes luck, and it takes really good partners and other very strong, competent people who are very skilled at what they do, far more skilled than I am.
So first of all, you use the word excoriated, which is, I still haven't been able to get beyond. You get a bonus point for that. I don't even know if I spelled it right, but that was impressive.
Enough to me, otherwise it'd have to excoriate you.
that was impressive. And then, you're getting a lot of props. First of all, Jeff is wondering when it will be the year of mobile. I mean, that's such an insider joke. Right?
When will it be the year of AI or AR, or fill in your, nascent?
So wait, I have a vision that one day we will be able to walk past a Starbucks and our phones will give us a 25-cent coupon. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
That was like, I just remember saying, if I ever hear anyone on stage, indicate that I'm going to get a 25-cent coupon for Starbucks with my phone, I will kill them.
Yes, I remember that meme. It was a meme, wasn't it?
But I have to say, it's interesting looking at the comments, because Michael noted, by the way, that the hanky was eMarketer red, and Carol Walker.
If you see me running at a conference, you'll see me with my eMarketer red hat and often an eMarketer shirt. Always be branding, ABB.
I'm telling you, and also according to Quinny, bring back run of sight banners. I think that's what it stands for. So I was taking notes while you were talking. I did a little bit of a deconstruction of what you said, and this is what I got from you. Number one, adaptability. Right, you started off in the link world and the e-commerce world. But no matter what digital transformation brought to the table, you adapted and you incorporated that. And your model was agile and flexible enough to do that. Number two, simplicity. It isn't just the red. It's that, the background. You never got, you almost were like, I guess the best way to describe this, and I mean this as the utmost compliment, you were like the Minecraft, of vendors or providers, right? You didn't try and over-engineer the graphics, and the sound cards. It was always that simplicity.
Can I just add a point to the simplicity thing? This actually comes out, we're talking about intelligence before, and I think there's probably at least one screw loose in my head. We all have our, what I like to call, learning challenges. And one of mine is that I, unlike what it says in my press release, not a visionary so much as that I have to look at everything that's going on before I have an opinion on it. So I like to uncover every single source, understand what came behind those numbers, how were the numbers achieved, why do the numbers not reconcile with other numbers that I've looked at. And I spend I could spend weeks looking at a whole bunch of information, data, insights, etc., before I come to a conclusion. And it's because I'm not so brilliant that I need to do that. But in doing so, when you spend the time digging through all that information and data, you can't help but start to understand what's going on. And I'll just illustrate that with a really great example. It's a true story. Whereas back in the day, I think it was an iMedia conference, I was getting nervous to get on stage because I was going to be talking about a whole bunch of things that I was very comfortable with. And somebody mentioned programmatic. So I ran over to Dave Smith. Everybody knows Dave Smith, the Media Smith. And I said, Dave, explain this programmatic thing. I just not understanding this. And he wrote down on a piece of paper on the back of an envelope. This is a real story. He wrote down this whole diagram of a DSP and where the data went. And it flummoxed me, I must say. But at least I got some kind of general 30,000-foot view understanding of what this was. And from that, we were able to start creating our own numbers for programmatic. And I will share just one other thing because it goes back to another point, being adaptable. There was a point about 10, 15 years ago that we were worried, my partner and I, that we might go out of business because everybody would have this internet thing figured out. Like we already understand search. We already understand social. So what more is there? Well, guess what? There's a never-ending stream, a runway of new models coming in. We're AI, we're AR, we're VR. The thing keeps self-generating new machines that we have to, shiny new objects that we have to figure out. So that's the adaptability. And the model works because we look at everything and then try to figure out what does this really mean for marketers that are trying to figure out how to sell product.
Well, I have a number of items left on my rubric and my report card. You're going to get a grade, but I will mention one of them, which I think is almost a great segue to the final piece of today's chat. And then I will remind people about something that you said, which kind of superseded all of them. The point I wanted to make is the figurehead was you. I think people can see from just looking at you, and if they didn't know you already, that you are the real deal. And you're passionate. You are, you love what you do. You do what you love. And I actually think that every company needs a Ramsey. They need a Geoff Ramsey. They need someone who can actually be on stage and be not just a figurehead, but actually be that spokesperson for the company. And in your case, it isn't a small feat to take all the bones, the dry bones of data and put flesh and bring them to life. But the thing that you actually said, which, while I was taking notes and everything, was, and I want to just make sure that I touch on this, is the word trust. It is something that is as corner and key to what brands and branding should be. But ultimately, it's a bond and a promise that you made with your community and your clients, and you kept it. And again, it speaks to the man that you are, and it speaks to the company that you built. So I just wanted to say that when I heard that you'd sold the company and we had a few scotches too many, I was so truly and genuinely happy for you. And whatever luck was involved is just due to your humility. It is all the successes deserved. And now it's on to the next phase of your life, Mr. Ramsey. So would you like me to tell you what it's going to... Huh?
Apparently the next phase of my life is being on the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, so have you arrived then? Because I'm going to give you a challenge. I'm going to give you a challenge because, first of all, we're going to replace your title. So no more Geoff Ramsey, founder of eMarketer and chief evangelist at Inside Intelligence. We're going to go with Geoff Ramsey, the magician. And here is your next challenge.
Later.
Here's your next challenge, if you choose to accept it, which is to figure out who this Geoff Ramsey is.
I know exactly who he is.
And make him disappear, because when you type Geoff Ramsey into Google,
lost so many people. But there early days, about 10, 15 years ago, if you typed into a Google search bar Geoff Ramsey, spelled my way with a Geoff, you would get all these links to me and photos of me. Now you get this guy who changed his name to Geoff Ramsey. I forget what his original name was, but he had a different surname, and he changed it because I think he was jealous of all the hits I was getting. And by the way, because he's a consumer star, he does voiceover for Rooster Productions. I'm not sure if that's what he's still doing, but I remember because I used to be able to show my kids, look, if you Google Geoff Ramsey, you're going to see pictures of your dad. Then it became, if you Google pictures of Geoff Ramsey, you're going to go down 16 layers, maybe 50 pages before you get to a link that's me, because this guy is in the consumer realm doing voiceovers and he's a lot cooler than your dad. Oh, well.
Yeah, but I got a feeling that when you set your mind to doing anything, God help anyone that gets in your way. But Geoff,
because I choose where to be competitive.
Exactly, and we know where you choose to be competitive. Cycling,
my running scores lately.
Running, I
can't always be self-deprecating.
What do you mean? What running scores? I don't know what you're talking about.
Why would you pick a slow one? All right. What's a hot human day?
709. You know, the only time I ever hit 709 was when I was actually driving in my car. But anyway, I want us to just end with this idea. It intrigued me. And then we'll quickly run over to the Zoom after show. I know you have limited time, but just so people can hang out with you for 10 minutes. But you said something that really touched me, and maybe you can just touch on it now, and then we can continue that thread next door in the Zoom after show. You said, I'm working very hard at just being as opposed to doing. I'm a human being, not a human doer. Being in the moment is very hard for me, working on gratitude, acceptance, and even meditation. It seems that you're a poet as well, Mr. Ramsey, but maybe just touch on that a little bit, because I think it shows, the battle inside you and how you are a constant work in progress, but one that is continuing to just evolve and get better, like a good wine with age.
And we know we both like that.
We do.
Now, let me address that by saying that, and I'll cue this back to the point in time where I sold the business. Or really what ended up being most of my shares. We sold it to Axel Springer, the German media publishing company. It was a really good sale. Everything went very well. But when you sell a company, it is, at least from my vantage point, it's almost like allowing your child to go off to college. Now, this is a good thing. And I have 4 children and 3 have been off to college. But there's a loss. There's a loss that comes with that. And so there came a point in my life, this was 2016 when I sold most of my shares. And I've been on a journey for the last 4 or 5 years, realizing that at some point, if all you're doing is racing ahead to get to the next thing, what you start realizing is that when you get to that next thing, your head immediately spins around and goes, oh, what's the next mountain I need to climb? And you start to come to the conclusion that you're in a rat race. You created your own gerbil cage that you're just running in place in. And yes, you may achieve goals. And I'm not saying goals are bad. I have had many of them in my life, and I've been very happy with what I've achieved, but it is not enough. And so I have struggled all my life not creating charts, not being on stage, but just like sitting as an example in my living room here or outside in my real home, by the brook, devouring books and reading and just contemplating what is the next stage for me? How do I need to be a better person? And it's funny because I use the same exact process to get to move through this journey to find my authentic self, to really dig deep, because we never really arrive there. It's a never-ending journey. So I ended up reading a ton of books. And in reading all of these different books, I was looking for the common denominators. What are the common patterns here? And I realized that there's this actual physiological side to us in our brains. It's called the neuroplasticity of the mind. It's a mind-blowing thing that we can actually change. How many people have told you, well, he'll never change, or I can't change, this is just the way I am? And I absolutely and totally reject that, because we can absolutely change our brains and who we are and how we act with other people and with ourselves by changing our brains, by doing what we do, how we do it, how we express ourselves to other people. We can start to change the synapses in our brains and make ourselves a better person. And so I have not stopped doing altogether. Obviously, I'm still doing lots and lots of these virtual presentations, and hopefully one day we'll get on a plane again. But the fact is, I'm spending a lot more of my quality time just reflecting on myself and just listening to what the universe has to tell me or what other people are saying, and learning from other people, because we can never stop growing and learning. And part of that is being grateful for what you have, not for what you don't have, but being grateful for what you do have in life, because you can always pine after something. And then it's also acceptance, accepting that I will always be limited in certain ways. I will maybe be a good runner, but I will never be a fantastic skier, even though I love skiing. I will be a better and better bike rider maybe, but I will never be a great chef. And that's okay. So we have to have acceptance, and we have to have gratitude. And then it also means, for me at least, being in the moment, which is not thinking about the future, my next presentation, my next podcast, my next video session. It's about, what are you doing right now in this second, while you're in the grocery store, waiting for that woman who is taking her sweet time trying to find the coupon, driving you insane because you're going to be late for this podcast, and just taking a sigh, a breath, and going, this is a person too that God made, and I'm just going to start to live with that and be cool with it, and maybe help her and say something nice. It's amazing how it can just change your day.
Well, I mean, you've changed my day. You've made my day. I loved that way to end the show. For hopefully people watching got all the different links to find out how to connect with Geoff. And also, he wrote a book called Digital Impact, which you can buy as well, and find out about the origins of his of his insights. But Geoff, let's go on over to the Zoom after show. Thank you for choosing to spend some of your time with me, with us. It was very meaningful and very special.
Thank you, Joe. It is always a pleasure to be with you.
And I'll be back, of course, tomorrow with Jeremiah Ouyang. But for the next 10 or 15 minutes, come on over to the Zoom after show, and we will see you very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching CoronaTV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. CoronaTV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text CoronaTV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.